I had a different intro for this review, but I am re-recording it now, having already re-recorded my entire review for the second time.
I'm insane with anger!
Just as a warning to let you know that
I'm losing my mind!
I'm on the verge of shouting at the camera for the majority of this review.
Ah!
Honestly, the only thing that allowed me to keep my sanity is the fact that Moraine is not in this episode. I think if she was, this would have been the end for me.
It's time for an ass whooping! I cursed. I heard.
Hey, this is the Sword and the Pen Reflections. It is my casual alternative to the formal channel, The Sword and the Pen, link up there. If you're new, here's the deal. I'm a freelance book editor, and I've been taking book series and comparing them to their live-action adaptations, and doing my best to see which one I think is doing a better job at telling a good story, and explaining why I think it's doing a better job. Most of this is my professional opinion, but I do put in my personal opinion because, I mean, how can you resist? We are looking today at The Wheel of Time. Now, I've never read the book series before, but I am currently on the third book, chapter 32-ish, around there, and season 2, episode 2 of the Amazon Prime adaptation. Now, I have actually seen all of season 2, but I was kind of half paying attention. So I watched it again now with my notebook, and I really took some thorough notes on the things that I think they got wrong, the things I think they did right, and, you know, what I would have done differently if I felt like just a minor change would have fixed this. But honestly, there's so much of that. Like, there's only so many minor changes you can make before you just say, why don't you redo the whole thing? Episode 2 seems to have the corresponding chapters of Book 2, which is The Great Hunt, Chapter 23. I wish I could say I knew where everything else was coming from, but it's like little bits and pieces taken from kind of everywhere, but also none of these things happened.
Just to be clear, what is happening?
So it's really hard to say where they are with the other characters, but Nynaeve, Book 2, Chapter 23. But anyway, before we dive into it, I just want to say a big special thank you to my 4th ever My Precious tier patron, Carlos. I seriously don't know who the heck all of you guys are. This is amazing. Thank you so much. You have brought me so much closer to living the dream life, the Hobbit life. Days in the fresh air and sunshine and nights under the stars.
I'd give anything for a whiff of old Toby.
Carlos, I know you're not in the Discord, but just wanted to say a big thank you to you anyway. Nynaeve, what is this broad up to? So we start out with her at the Arches, and we get kind of an explanation of what they are. When you come to the White Tower, you are a novice, but if you are an adult, you want to graduate into the accepted level so you can start apprenticing different Ajas and find out which one you want to join. In order to do that, you have to go through the Arches, and it's explained that the Arches will show you your greatest fear. Now, I was a little like, what the heck, why do they do this in the books and the show? Because it seemed to me like they don't really know what the Arches do specifically, but they're kind of, they feel like they kind of know, and they just send their novices through it, and sometimes they die, and sometimes they don't. They survive and they come back out.
Sometimes may be good, sometimes may be shit.
That is not a sustainable way for you to, like, pick who's gonna stay with you. But at the same time, I kind of get it, like, all right, we want to make sure you really, really badly want to be an Aes Sedai and serve the tower. And if you don't, well, whatever. But I mean, death? So I wasn't satisfied with this in the book, wasn't satisfied with it in the show, but I'll just kind of let it be for now. But one of the things that is explained is that the Arches, when you are in them, you're going to go in them, you're going to be shown your greatest fear, which really isn't what they're shown. You're going to go in there and experience something, basically, and then the arch will reappear, but only once, and you have to go through it then and, like, come back to the real world, or that's it. You're in there forever and you're dead. And this is really important to remember. So Nynaeve is told to strip down, and she takes off her dress but not her chemise, which would be like her underdress, right? And this might seem like a very small detail. In the books, she goes completely naked. That's a requirement. In the show, they didn't have her do this. And I can only think that there's one reason why they wouldn't have her do this, and that is because maybe the actress didn't want to be nude on camera, which I can respect. That's fine. Like, modesty is a totally acceptable thing, but then you gotta have a director who can be creative enough to say, okay, you won't be naked on set, but we're gonna use, like, body doubles for any wide shots, like from behind, or, you know, we're gonna make you dress in things that'll look like you're naked, but you're not. And then she can save her modesty without actually, you know, compromising herself. You get the idea. I just would have appreciated if this is what they did, because when if that is the reason. If it's not, if they wanted to have her wear this dress so that way you can see the bloodstains that are going to appear on it later, that was a bad choice, because doing this actually takes away some of the realism of what happens in the arches. And I'll explain it when we get to it. But so she takes off her dress with the exception of her chemise, which is different from the book, and she goes through the first arch. Now, the first arch, after she's gone through, in the book, she seems to be back at the Eye of the World. It wasn't really clear where she was, but she encounters somebody who, in the first book, in the Eye of the World, she encountered there. It's one of those two guys that was there, one of the other Forsaken, and he's coming after her. He's chasing her. It seems like he wants to rape her, and she uses the one power to like escape from him. And then I don't know if she's totally neutralized him or if she just slowed him down and got away from him, but either way, that's what happens. And then she gets out and she goes, well, I used the one power on the guy. And they're like, what? You can't use the one power in there. Like, don't do that again. Like, first of all, you're not supposed to be able to. And secondly, if you do, you'll die, or like you could die. So they tell her not to do it again. And she's like, okay, I won't do it again. But she does. But anyway, so that's what happened in the book. Now, in the show, she gets zapped back to what I can presume is her past, her own childhood. She's a little girl, approximately 7 or 8. Now, it looks like the actress, but she's wearing a little girl's dress, and later we get a reflection in water where she can see that, oh, I'm about, I'd say between 7 and maybe 9, like somewhere around that age, but no older than like 11, definitely not older than that. She's with her dad, they're gathering herbs or something, and suddenly these bandits appear out of the woods. Now, first of all, I hated that the dad looked off into the woods and was like, what's that?
He's just standing there. What the hell is he doing?
You can literally see bandits standing there, drawing their bows, aiming at him. He doesn't do anything, and Nynaeve has to push her dad out of the way.
Your daughter's amazing.
I mean, if I saw somebody raising a bow and aiming towards me, I'd be jumping for cover. Or especially if you're a dad, you'd be grabbing your little girl and trying to hide. So this was just, I didn't understand this at all. Unless her dad's like one of those people who, like, when flight or fight urges come to him, he does the freeze, fight, flight, or freeze. He does the freeze thing.
Coward.
But anyway, so that's what happens. Then the bandits jump onto them, and they're in a wrestling match. The dad and one of the bandits is in a wrestling match, and the little girl is in a, well, little Nynaeve is in a wrestling match with another guy, and she's like beating him basically. Like he's on top of her with a knife trying to stab her, and she's able to hold his arm back. And I'm going, I don't know a full-grown adult who couldn't win a wrestling match with like a 7 or 9-year-old girl.
The Boulder takes issue with that comment.
So that was very unrealistic. I did not like it. I would have told them, no, don't do that. Have her maybe run away and then desperately trying to come back and get her dad or something. But anyway, Mom shows up and saves the day by shooting the bandits.
What a fantastic woman.
Then all of the bandits start coming out of the woods, and it's like a freaking army. I mean, this is easily as many people as there were in the army that attacked the Aes Sedai camp in episode, 4 of season 1? Where they had that war in the forest, or that battle in the forest when Logain was being set free or whatever. That. So I don't know why they're coming after this small family, but they are. Anyway, the mom has taken the dad and the daughter. They run back to their house, which seems really stupid because they're, like, of course they're going to be in there hiding. Like, just keep running until you find another town where people can help defend you or whatever. But anyway, or just hiding somewhere. I thought that her dad was supposed to be really good at tracking, so like you would think he knows like a deer trail that leads to a cave that nobody can find or something. But either way, they run into the house, and the dad takes the daughter, so Nynaeve, down into the cellar and recites the words that were recited at Manetheren. I can't remember who said it, but it was back again in season 1, episode 4 or 5. Nynaeve tells Lan, these were the last things that my parents said to me before they died. And anyway, so you have that scene where the dad recites this in the old tongue, and then he goes upstairs. Now upstairs, from the cellar upstairs, you can hear the bad guys bust in. Mom gets, I don't know, tackled or something, because now she's laying on her stomach on the floorboards, and she's looking up and can see her mother's eyes looking down at her through the floorboards. I was reminded a lot of Sleepy Hollow, the Tim Burton movie. this same sort of thing happens, but the person is basically dead. But you can hear in the sound effects that the mom is still screaming up there, like she's still struggling with them. So I'm not sure what's going on up there, but the mom's face isn't moving, so I'm going, I think this was just a bad match of sound effects. Anyway, I'm not going to complain too much more about that, but essentially the struggle seems to still be happening up there. Nynaeve grabs a butcher knife of some kind and is about to go upstairs when suddenly the arch appears and she remembers, oh, the way will come but once. And instead of going up to save her parents, she goes through the arches. She comes back out, freaking out, like going, oh my gosh, was that real? Like, could I have changed things if I stayed? Like, she's wondering if it's real. And this is my first big complaint about this particular scene. Shiriam essentially says that some people come out with wounds that they sustained in the vision or in the arches, and they have to be healed. And some people have been wounded in the arches, but they come out and they're not hurt at all. And it feels like that's a really roundabout way of not saying we don't know if what happens in the arches is real or not. Because in the book, they very directly address this issue. I don't remember who it is that says it, but somebody basically says to Nynaeve, she's like, was that real? And the Aes Sedai says, you know what? Nobody knows, but I have to tell myself it's not real, because if it is real, it's too horrific for me to live with. Like, essentially that is what is said. So she convinces herself it's not real, it's not real, it's not real. Now that means that the stakes are very, very high in this situation. She could actually stay and possibly save her parents, although I don't believe she could have. I actually think her parents were already dead because the struggle was going on way too long, and her mom was the only warrior one and was face down, whatever, you get the idea. But she could have, in her mind, thinks she could have stayed and possibly saved her parents and changed her past. But in the book, we wonder, was that like an alternate reality? So we're kind of going, it's almost like maybe, because when you jump in, they have the memories of that person. So it's not like she goes in and she's like, oh my gosh, am I back in my childhood? This is nuts. She just appears in a moment in her own past and remembers it as if this is real. Like, she's experiencing this for the first time now, and she kind of has this faint idea of something's not quite right. Isn't there something about a way coming but once? I don't know. But it seems real when you're in it. And when the arch appears, you remember the way will come but once. And it's sort of like your subconscious has to so badly want to go be an Aes Sedai that no matter what you're leaving behind, you will go through the arch. That's the test. Now, I actually thought that what the show did was a bit of an improvement, that, she thought she could save her parents, but then she couldn't. Because in the book, it was like, what were you giving up here? It's almost like, here's a terrible situation. You're getting attacked by a guy who wants to rape you, but you get away from him and you go through the arch. Like, I didn't feel like, whatever. But it was not as effective because you didn't have that conversation later where she wonders, is this real? And they're like, we don't know. It might be. Instead, it seems like it's pretty obvious that it's not real. And we'll come back to my proof for why I think it's not real later on, at least according to the show. But like I said, it takes away the impact of what this could have meant. I mean, it could be that this is like a parallel world where she does have this life and she just stepped away from it. She just left it. Like, everything that happened there, maybe she could have made a difference and had this wonderful life in this parallel world. And now she's abandoning it. And when the later visions happen, that's really important. Because see, in the books, these parallel worlds are a thing. Like, you have a whole sequence in the second book where Rand is inside like this between the worlds sort of weird zone.
Rand.
And I know that it's going to be an important thing later on, but whatever. Anyway, okay. I'm trying to rush through this because I don't want to take so long with my edits anymore. So she has to go through the arches 3 times, and she can actually back out twice if she wants to, but then the third time that she wants out, they're like, we're going to kick you out of the tower. But in this case, she does decide to go through the second arch. She goes through the second arch and has a very similar experience to what she had in the book. So she arrives in present-day Two Rivers, or Emond's Field, and there's a plague that has struck. So this is in the show. There's a plague that has struck, and it's like killing everybody. And Mat's mother has now become the wisdom, and she doesn't know what the hell she's doing, but people are so sick that she's essentially poisoning people out of mercy so that they don't, suffer as they're dying. And so Nynaeve is like, what the hell are you doing? And Mat's mother is like, you know what? Like, you left and you have no right to criticize what I'm doing. We're doing the best that we can. And Nynaeve goes, well, why don't you call the Aes Sedai? Like, they could cure this, no problem, like as if it was nothing. And the mother goes, we have contacted the White Tower, and you know what? They have blown us off. You're the first Aes Sedai to come here ever. And Nynaeve is like,
well, there has to be another way.
And you are not helpful here at all.
You have no solution. So you're here criticizing, and you have no solution for what their problem is. But then Matt's mother finally says it. She's like, look, go cure them with your Aes Sedai powers or leave. Like, I don't care. Just, like, leave us alone because we're doing the best we can, and if you can't contribute, then get out of our way, essentially. Before we continue, please like, subscribe, and comment. It's a free way to support the channel. Or, if you're feeling extra generous, check out my Patreon or Ko-fi. There's links in the description. Or you can hit the money heart thanks button down below and leave me a tip. Now, back to the review. So she goes over to the person who was in the cot next to her, because she actually woke up in a cot. She wakes up next to Tam, which is Rand's father, and he's dying and he's being poisoned, and he knows it. He knows that he's being poisoned, so it'll be a merciful death. And she goes over to him and she's like, don't worry, I'm gonna save you. And she tries to do the one power thing on him, and it doesn't work because she's blocked. She can't actually use the one power. And Rand's dad is like, oh, well, you know what, just that's fine, you did your best, but, you know, is Rand happy? And she thinks he's dead, so she's like, yeah, he's happy. And he's like, well, okay, I'm just so happy to see you. Would you please be with me while I die, you know, so that I can be with somebody who I care about, that kind of thing, because, you know, she's really important in the community. So she's like, oh yeah, sure, I will. And then, so she's really not doing anything except keeping Tam company. That's when the arch appears, and she has to go through it. So she's like, I'll be right back. And he's like,
Why you want to leave me?
but she goes anyway. She goes through the arch. Now, I don't like this because it was different from the book in a way that makes the situation in the show seem like she's not really sacrificing anything. And this is a big problem because I feel like this is the test. I don't know what the heck they're saying, like, oh, it's going to show you your fears and you're going to have to face your fears, because that's not what happens at all. Even in the book, it's a sacrifice. It's like you have to. Maybe it's something you would hope you never have to do. You're afraid of this situation ever occurring because you would have to do the same thing. So she gets to the Two Rivers. We're talking about the book now. And the kids got sick or something, or some animals got sick, and a new wisdom is brought in from another town. And essentially, Nynaeve figures out that this new wisdom has started poisoning people and then curing them. So she can be like, oh, you know, everybody thought that they were just getting sick on their own, but then she comes in and cures them, and voila. Then she has manipulated the politics in the town so that she's in a position of power, and anybody who opposes her, she poisons their kids. And it's pretty bad. Everybody feels really intimidated by her, and Nynaeve is exactly the kind of person who you could see who, if she came back to town, she would rally everybody against this evil wisdom and out them. But the arch appears, and she's like, I could save this my town, the people I love, the children who I have, you know, helped bring into the world and stuff, or go back and be an Aes Sedai. And she has to go back through the arches and come out on the other end, and knows that she left the town, or she might have left the town that she has protected for most of her life, to die under the cruelty of this evil wisdom lady. That is a huge sacrifice, and that just didn't happen in the show. What did she sacrifice in this show? Essentially, she just didn't hold Tam's hand as he died. That's it? I mean, that's not nearly as big a deal as saving a bunch of kids who were being poisoned by an evil person. I mean, she didn't even have a solution for what the problem was. They have this plague, and she doesn't know how to cure the plague. And she can't use the one power to save them, like she tried and didn't work. So she could do nothing. There was literally nothing she could do to help the town. So she didn't give up helping them. She gave up being present as they all died. That's it. That was a bad choice. No good there. You shouldn't have done that. Okay, so she comes out and she's like, oh no, we have to go to the Two Rivers and help. And they're like, there's no time, like, don't burden us with your problems. And like, hey, you gotta go through the third arch. And so Nynaeve is like, oh, okay. And so she goes through the third arch, and it's a bit different. She's in sort of like a vortex where it's like, she's a red Aja. So she's wearing the red of the red Aja, and it's all stormy, and it looks like she's wearing the One Ring, like the wind whipping, and it's loud and noisy. She can hear Lan's voice reciting that "you are a lioness" speech that he gave at the end of season 1, and it's in the book also. And it's vague what happens. You can't see anything, but suddenly she comes out of the arch and she's got blood on her hands, and she opens up her hand, and I didn't know what the hell she had in her hands. It looked like some rope. And she says Lan. Like, after a couple times watching, I figured out it's the headband thing that Lan wears. So she goes, "Lan, oh no, what did you make me do in there?" So the show is implying that she believes that she was forced to kill Lan, even though we didn't see any of it. But anyway, she turns to the others and they're like, "It's not your blood, but you're okay. But, congratulations, you made it through the 3 arches. Here is your accepted ring. You are now one of us." And she's like, "I don't want that. If becoming an Aes Sedai means that you have to turn on everybody that you love, I want nothing to do with this." And she's like, "I'm out of here." And they're like, "If you leave, you can never come back." And so she gives them the like, haha, sort of look. And that's the end of that. Now, at this point, I was kind of going, what the hell is going on? This is very weird, but, I didn't know if the show was ever going to explain what was going on. But in the next scene, I had some serious hints about what was going on. She's in her room packing, and Egwene comes in, and Egwene is like,
"You can't leave. Don't leave me. I need you."
And I was like, oh.
It's all a dream.
And the funny thing is I wasn't 100% sure, because I could totally believe that this is what the writers would do with this dialogue with Nynaeve, because they've had some crazy ass dialogue that just seems shoved in there every once in a while. So I was like, okay, this could just be the way that they decided to write Egwene during this scene. Like, "Don't leave me." But to me, it just felt like I don't feel like they would want to make Egwene say this, because she didn't say it before. Like, when she was in distress in front of Nynaeve, she didn't say, "Oh, I need you so much to be with me and support me," or anything like that. She was just crying and upset about how, "I really miss Rand." That was in the first episode. So I felt like this is part of a dream. This is part of the arches or whatever. And I got my confirmation in the very next scene. So Nynaeve is like, "You don't really need me, stay here, become an Aes Sedai, be one that I can be proud of." And then she takes off. And she rides off on her horse away from Tar Valon. And right then, and I loved this scene, Lan comes galloping towards her on his black steed, his hair whipping in the wind. It was so cheesy. It was like something out of a romance novel adaptation. I was cracking up. But it was at this moment that I knew this is clearly all a dream. So he comes running over towards her, and I know I promised my family I wouldn't complain about this, but I'm complaining about this. So Lan's cape looks very nice on him with the draping that's been done here, but it's been stitched in place, and I'm okay with it being stitched in place, but you should do it so you can't tell. It looks like somebody had their button and stitch, emergency sewing kit on hand. And they're like, "Oh, Lan's cape keeps falling off of his shoulder. Can we stitch it in place?" And they just grabbed some navy blue threads and started stitching really crappily right across his back. You can see it. The threads don't match the fabric. So that bugged me a lot. I don't mind if you stitch it so that it looks like it's naturally draping like this and not falling off of his shoulders. But I look at this now and I go, this is not a functioning cape. This is a decoration. But I know it's just a small complaint. It's a stupid thing to complain about, but you know what? I'm complaining about it. How hard could it be to use gray thread and not do this weird box stitching? I don't know what the hell that is. It's like giant cross stitching. Anyway, Lan is like,
"Oh, I heard that you were going through the arches, so I came as quick as I could."
She's like,
"I couldn't do it."
And he goes,
"Where will you go?" "Home to the 2 rivers."
I could come with you if you'll have me.
"What about Moraine and the bond?"
And I don't know how his look to her in that moment told her the bond doesn't exist. To me, it just seemed like this was once again the writers not informing the audience of what the situation is with Lan's bond. We still don't know. Is he still bonded to Moraine? Is he not bonded to Moraine? We don't find out until the very end of the entire season. And that is just bad storytelling, because when anything could be the situation, you could literally do anything and we'll just go, well, we don't know yet if he's bonded or not bonded. It's just not good. So anyway, I gotta keep going. We gotta go through these notes fast. Oh my gosh, I've got so many notes. But Nynaeve is like, "Oh, sure, you can come with me. I'm fine with that." And that's when the arch starts to appear. And she's hearing the way will come but once. And she's like, what is that? She turns around. not in time to see the arch, but just in time to see it fading away. And Lan's like, what is it? And she's like, oh, nothing, or whatever, like, let's go. So the arch has appeared for its one and only time and disappeared. Remember, it's supposed to only appear once, and that's how it is in the books too. But it will appear again, and it just makes no sense. Let's keep going. It's at this point that we get, Nynaeve leaves with Lan, and we get the reveal that she's still in the Arches. So we see the 3 Aes Sedai ladies, including Liandrin and the Mistress of Novices, and they're like, well, Nynaeve has made her choice, and that's the end of that.
Well, we've done all we can do.
Really great loss for humanity.
And Liandrin, you can tell, is shocked and trying not to react much, but the Mistress of Novices is like, this is your fault, and Liandrin's like, it's dangerous going through the Arches, she just obviously didn't have what it takes, or whatever, something like that. And the Mistress of Novices essentially goes, no, you know what, she trusted us, and we blew it, and, I feel guilty about this, you should too, because, it's our fault that she's dead, I'm gonna feel guilty about this forever, whatever. Then she leaves, and Liandrin is left alone, and then she loses her cool. You can tell she's very upset, angry, sad, but mostly angry, and she throws the pot of water. Oh yeah, after Nynaeve came out of each of these arches, this pot of water was poured over her, and she was told, your sins are forgiven you, and all the sins that were committed against you, whatever. So, the next scene where we have Nynaeve, we're back in her dream, so she's back in the world with Lan, the fake future with Lan, and she's now back in the 2 rivers. So they've decided to go back to the 2 rivers. She has a daughter, Perrin is there, and he's made a sword for the daughter, and Matt shows up, and he's wearing all this really fancy clothes, and he has a beautiful horse. And Matt has brought her a letter from Egwene, and they go into the house together, Matt and Perrin and Nynaeve and the daughter, to have honey cakes. And oh my gosh, Nynaeve, your vision of Lan is anything but sexy. I'm sorry. Maybe it's just my personal opinion. This is not a good look for Lan.
Take a bath, hippie!
I don't get this. But anyway, so he's making honey cakes. Nynaeve is chatting with him while Matt and Perrin are playing with the daughter in the background. And apparently the letter was from Egwene. And Egwene's talking about how she's going off to some faraway city where there's Trollocs, and she's going to be, she's a Green Aja. Apparently they're going to fight the Trollocs. And I didn't like that Lan was like, well, that sounds like it's really far away, and Nynaeve was like, not far away enough. I mean, I feel like Lan should have been the one who was more cautious about the presence of Trollocs, but maybe he's just really confident in himself. But it was Nynaeve's reaction that solidified for me that was what was going on, because she goes, not far enough away or something, whatever. Anyway, I'm trying to rush through these notes as fast as I possibly can, but the main thing is this. I wasn't convinced that this was what a real Lan would have thought in this situation, like, oh, it's really far away, nothing to worry about, and that like Nynaeve would be the one who's more cautious about the presence of Trollocs in the world. But then again, this is possibly just her fantasy world, which we will get back to, because remember, we don't know if this is fantasy or parallel world, like real possible future kind of a thing. And the show is going to reveal that it is pretty much just fantasy, and we'll get to that.
They're all clones. He's his own brother. Everyone's a ghost.
So right around that time, Lan is like, don't worry, I think that Egwene can handle just a few Trollocs, whatever. So Egwene is a Green Aja. And suddenly, Trollocs start attacking their house. Like, they didn't hear them approaching or anything. They are just pounding on the door. You literally get one of them busting a hole out through the door.
Here's Johnny!
And the 3 men in the room just stand there staring at it. They just stand there. You don't see any of them run for a weapon or anything. But Nynaeve takes the daughter down into the cellar, and you kind of have a mirrored image of Egwene, or of Nynaeve, saying, stay down here no matter what you hear or whatever. And she grabs a hatchet and goes back upstairs. There's a dead Trolloc in the doorway, but nobody's in the house anymore, so they've brought the fight outside. She gets outside, and a Trolloc is literally eating Matt right there outside of the entrance. And so she starts attacking the Trolloc, and they fight and, back and forth, and she eventually gets the Trolloc. But the thing is this, if Matt had grabbed a weapon, he probably wouldn't have died so easily. But this is Nynaeve's fantasy, so Then she looks over at Perrin, and Perrin, she only notices for a few seconds as he's fighting one Trolloc. Another Trolloc throws an axe at him, and he gets axed in the back. He's dead now, too. Finally, she sees Lan. Lan is fighting 2 Trollocs, but then he gets distracted. I'm not really sure. I can't remember. But either way, he gets stabbed through the back so that a spear is sticking out of his front, and now he's dead. And she freaks out. Now, this was just bad staging, but when she sees Lan dead, or, being skewered through the chest or whatever and falling over, looks like she's about 15 feet away from him, and the Trollocs are standing right there next to him. And the Trollocs don't move while she just sits there and watches him die. Like, they're just standing there watching him die.
Finish her!
It takes way too long. Then she takes, I counted it, 7 steps towards Lan, and now it looks like she's 5 or 6 feet away from Lan. And she screams, was it 5 or 6 feet? Did I say it was 5 or 6 or maybe 7? Either way, she's still not being attacked by the Trollocs, which are right there. And she screams, the one power busts out of her and it destroys the Trollocs. And now she's there weeping over Lan. Lan is obviously dying. He just, bubbles out a few murmurs. I don't even know if he says anything. I don't really care. And she's kind of there holding his head and he dies. Now it's important that she's holding his head, but not like this in her lap or over her belly, but kind of like at her knees. She's kneeling down and there, because there's literally one shot and then the next shot, and there's a difference in her costume. So she's wearing a different dress than she was at the beginning of this vision, this third vision, right? And one shot of her approaching Lan has no blood on the dress. And then she's holding Lan's head, not on herself, but over the dirt, basically. And the next shot shows she's got a blood stain all over the front of her dress. And I'm going, where the hell did that blood come from? It wasn't Lan's, he was over there. But okay, small difference. But either way, it's important that it's a different dress from the first, moment in this vision. She was wearing her green dress at the beginning of the vision when she went riding off and saw him coming over the hill all romantic and now she's wearing a blue shirt and a different skirt. But right at that moment, the kid comes out of the house and is like, Mommy, what's that? And it's the Arch. The Arch has appeared a second time for no apparent reason. This is a rule in the magic system, or at least in this moment. It's only supposed to appear once. The show has repeated it now 3 times. The Arch will come but once. The Way will come but once. Don't forget, it will come but once. But here it is appearing a second time for no reason. Now, in the book, you get a very similar, it's different, but this is how it works in the book. Okay, in the book, she wakes up after going through the third arch, and she's standing in a field, and she's like, oh, I've been married to Lan for a really long time, and we have kids. And she's talking to him, and he's kind of reminding her of things, because she's like, something's not quite right about this. And she realizes she's super happy in this life. And then the Arch appears, and she's like, I don't know, I think I have to go. And Lan's like, no, don't go. What's going on? Essentially, she's being tempted to stay in this wonderful life with this husband that she loves and her kids that she loves. And suddenly the Arches appear. And then the Arches disappear. And this is why it's important in the book, what happens in the book, and it makes sense. There's some symbolism to what happens here. She knows I was supposed to go through that archway, and she uses the one power to call the Arch back. She basically forces it to reappear. And the symbolism of this is that essentially this is a woman who has such a strong force of will. She's not going to do things the way people normally do. She is going to force her own way through and make it work. And that just, how empowering. Why wouldn't you want that to be the message that you are conveying to everybody, that this is a woman who is so strong and has such a fierce will that she can literally break the magic and force something to happen so that it works to her advantage and she can still get the result that she wants. So she's not going to go through the arches the way that everybody usually is supposed to. She's going to go through in her own way. It's almost like she's like, I'm not going to do things the way you want me to. I'm still going to get some of the things that I want from you, but I'm not going to do the things that you want from me.
I need to cross the river.
Listen what I'm telling you. There's no way.
Ah, my way. Yeah!
eat glop, man? You're crazy.
Like, that's what that symbolizes, and it's what we got in the book. But in the show, because it just appears a second time for no reason, we're going, okay, why did it appear for no reason? That makes no sense. And two, like, what did she sacrifice? She didn't sacrifice anything. Everybody was dead. And what happens is the arch appears, she looks off into the hills, or off into the distance, and okay, this was bad CGI. I thought what I was seeing was a cave that was near her house, and the inside of the cave was ablaze. I mean, I was wondering, why did you guys build your house next to this creepy-ass cave? And now the cave is on fire.
It is told that it came through the mouth of hell.
And these Trollocs are coming out of it. But no, that's not actually what happened. This was just bad use of the special effects, or like a bad, not rendering, I forget what, basically, I think they should have maybe blurred the flames in the background more or something. But what it was Edmund's field is on fire far in the distance, and the Trollocs are coming up over the hill. Okay, so that's what happens. So she sees that, she grabs her kid and runs through the arch. Her kid is literally the only thing left of her life in this fantasy world. So she's not sacrificing anything by grabbing her kid and running through the arch. Like, she's taking the kid with her. Like, this is all she's got left. She's going with it. So she didn't sacrifice anything. So you took that away as well. This was a bad choice. I'm really unhappy with what they did with these visions. I thought that they were on the right track when they changed the first vision, because I thought, oh, you're doing something better. Like, she's gonna have to leave her parents. It wasn't great, but it was still better than what I saw in the books, which I mean, maybe what happened in the books has some significance later. I didn't see that she was sacrificing anything in that first vision in the books. I thought that it was like, oh, you didn't want to get raped by this guy who's coming after you, and you had an out. So what'd you leave? Nothing. You left the possibility of getting raped. So it was much better, I thought, to have that she's leaving her parents. But anyway, so when she comes out of the arch back in the real world, she no longer has a child in her arms, but she's got the same blood stain that she had that mysteriously appeared on her dress in the vision, but now it's on her chemise, and she's crying. The actress is doing a very nice job, by the way. I have to say, not disappointed with any of the acting in this show. I know a lot of people complain, like, the acting is bad. I haven't seen bad acting. I have seen really crappy script writing, and have seen what I believe to be poor directing, like as if the actors are being told, do it like this, say it like this, because I don't think that these actors are doing the things that seem really awkward because they felt like it felt natural. I think that it's very unnatural intentionally, like the director's telling them to do something that doesn't make sense, and they're going, okay, and they're doing it. But here's what gives away that this is not real. Her wearing a chemise and going in, especially in this third vision, means that, okay, so she had a chemise, goes into the first vision, she's wearing the green dress, and then at the end of the vision, she's wearing like a blue top and a skirt, and the blood stain appears on her blue top and her skirt. Not the green dress, the blue top and the skirt. And when she comes out, she's wearing the chemise again, but it's the same blood stain. Like, they clearly made an effort to make it look like the same blood stain, even though we have no idea where the blood came from because it didn't come from land. So that means that everything that happens in the arches is just a vision. It's not real, it's just an illusion. Like, she's not actually changing her clothes, she's wearing her chemise inside of the arch. So I didn't like this. I do think that they should have had her naked in this, and if they didn't have her naked because the actress didn't want to be naked, that's fine, but you should have had her naked in the show. You should have used body doubles, you should have, angled the camera right so that, you couldn't see that she was actually wearing clothes on set. There's many things you can do to make it look like somebody is naked in front of the camera, even though they are not, and they should have done that because this breaks that. You basically just told us it's all fake. But anyway, she comes out of the arch, and Egwene is there, and she cries in Egwene's arms. The end. I didn't like what they did with Nynaeve. That's all I got to say about that. Now we're going to look at Perrin. So Perrin is pretty much in the same situation that he was at the end of the previous episode. This town has been subjugated by the Shan-Chan, and they're up to their shenanigans. I mean, the Shan-Chan are. So the Shan-Chan are marching their slave Aes Sedai through this area, and they're picking out women. And I mean, we find out later that they're picking them to be slave Aes Sedai, essentially. And Uno is the only one of the Shienarans who's like, what the hell? We can't let them just take these girls. We should do something. And he's got a knife that apparently no Shan-Chan noticed he happened to have. And he's like, I'm going to do something. And Ingtar is like, no, don't. But anyway, then the Shan-Chan are essentially saying, like, we want you guys to swear the 3 oaths. Just swear the 3 oaths and, you can be on your merry way, which is sort of what happened in the book, except there wasn't all this violence that's about to happen. Uno is making eyeballs at one of the Shan-Chan soldiers, and the soldier is making eyeballs back at him. And so he's picked to be the example setter. He's brought before the palanquin that Lady Suroth, that's the leader of the Shan-Chan, is seated atop. And there's this like curved spike. He's kneeling right in front, or no, he's not kneeling, he's standing right in front of the curved spike. And they're told, like, hey, you need to avert your eyes from Lady Suroth and swear the 3 oaths. And he looks right up at her and basically spits and is like, forget it, essentially. And they're like, okay, well, if you refuse to take the oaths are going to be sworn for you. And they force him to kneel. Everybody chants the whole, the oaths, which are, we will obey, we will await, and we will serve. Something like to that effect. And then they do something that I was really shocked that they were going to do, but they kill Uno.
Again?
So he's being killed for the second time now because he was killed at the end of season 1.
He's dead, all right.
I mean, you can't get much deader than me.
Dead. He is right now, unless, of course, we killed him again.
I suppose.
But this time they decided to kill him in Game of Thrones. They were channeling Game of Thrones here. They were hoping to have something so violent and shocking that anybody who was watching Game of Thrones for the violence would be watching this and go like, oh, this is what I'm here for. I love this. But I mean, if you're not going to have it elsewhere in the show, you think they're going to wait a whole season and 3 episodes before they get the violence that they've been looking for? What they did was they shoved him into this spike. It goes right through his mouth and out the back of the skull. But that wasn't enough. For good measure, they stomp on his back and force it through even more so that it literally splits his jaw open and shoves the spike out the back of his head even more. So Uno is dead for now. I like the Uno character. I don't see a point in killing him because I know that he's still alive in the books. And from what I hear, he's alive through either all of them or most of them. But whatever, they're just going to kill off one of the most interesting characters that we've had in the Shienaran group. I mean, he brought so much comedy onto the scene. Why would you take something like that out of here? Like, let's just have everybody be angsty and like bad mood. Maybe this is why I'm in such a bad mood right now. Then Ingtar basically whispers over to Perrin, like, it's not worth our lives to not swear these oaths or whatever. Our pride's not worth our lives. And so they all swear the oaths, and Perrin also. Now, the next scene, we have Perrin waking up in a cart. He's been chained to the inside of this transportation cart, which you would think should be full of other people, but it's just him and Ishamael. And I'm just going, how did he not notice himself getting loaded into this cart? Because Ishamael's next line basically indicates that he didn't realize he was being loaded into this cart. I didn't see that Perrin had any kind of serious head injury that would make him unconscious and, not wake up. He seemed perfectly fine in the previous scene, just standing there watching. He actually has more blood on his face now than he did before. I'm wondering if there was a cut scene where like somebody went up to Perrin and knocked him out or something, but we'll never know. Either way, just because he woke up and like, oh, I didn't notice you there to Ishamael, it reminded me of a script that my 9-year-old nephew wrote. So I let my 9-year-old nephew write a YouTube review script and then act it out on his own. And he did it. And of course, well, here's what it looked like.
Well, hello, everybody. I'm sorry I was sleeping, but welcome back to Brian's next review of Matilda.
So that was the vibe that I got from this scene. I was like, yep, just like how a 9-year-old would introduce this scene. But Ishamael explains that you're alive because I've saved you. We're heading to Falm. You're going to be offered a new life there by the Shan-Chan. But honestly, it's not a life that, you should be wanting or whatever. He's like, it's, not a good situation for you. And then he pointedly offers Perrin some water. And I really didn't like this scene because in the books, the boys are told by Moraine that in their dreams, they need to resist the Dark One. Anything that he offers, you need to resist him, you need to deny him, like don't agree to anything. And one of the things that they resist is being offered a drink over, I know it happened with Rand, and this was in the first book, I think. But I can't remember if it happened with Perrin too, but I think so. Either way, I specifically remember that they were not to drink from a chalice or something, like, do not drink from this. And so they didn't. They all resisted it. But here you've got Perrin accepting the water from Ishamael, and it was like very weird the way Ishamael was going to give him this water. So I didn't like this because I thought it's almost like a slap in the face to all of the symbolism in the book. Unless, of course, Perrin actually is a bad guy. He does eventually turn out to be a bad guy, in which case I'd be like, okay, then maybe they're alluding to in the future, Perrin's going to go bad. That's the only reason I could see this happening. So if he goes bad in the future, let me know. I don't know. But yeah, Ishamael's like, I always thought that you're something special. And Perrin's like, who are you? And then he figures out that this is the guy who's been in my dreams. And he's like, I thought that you're dead. Rand killed you. And Ishamael's like, haha, that's what Moraine told you. Whatever. Like, okay. Then we can start hearing wolves howling and stuff right outside of this caravan thing or whatever. And Perrin asks, what is it that you want from me? And this is where Ishamael essentially tells him, well, actually it was before this, it was right after the drink thing. He goes, the more wolf you are, like I can tell there's a beast inside of you. And I want you to show me the monster that's inside you. And now after he's figured out this is the guy I thought was the Dark One, so he thinks this is the Dark One, he tells him like, the more wolf you are, does he say the more wolf? Yeah, he says the more wolf you are, the more you're mine. And in this moment, I actually thought that he was going to try to kiss Perrin. Like they've done some very weird sexualization of Ishamael where he's like trying to seduce Rand and Perrin in a sexual way rather than like a power offering kind of way. Like you're not doing a good job of seducing them. Just saying, it's a bad strategy. It makes your villain look stupid. And then Ishamael gives that Star Wars Episode 1 Senator Palpatine line to Anakin Skywalker.
We will watch your career with great interest.
And he walks out. At this point, it's as if the show wants us, the audience, to be asking ourselves, what is Ishamael's plan? Like, he must have a plan with the Shan-Chan specifically and Perrin. So what is it? So we're very, very curious about what that is, and we expect that there will be an answer given to us before the end of the season, and that the answer will be something that makes us go, oh wow, that was very clever. We'll be so impressed by what it is that everything that has happened here makes sense, and we're just going, wow, that was great. I love that we have such a clever and impressive villain, because if it's not that, you're not going to be impressed with this villain. He's just going to seem like just some regular, like, why are you a bad guy even? Like, you're not a threat. And so this is the expectation that is being implanted in the audience with this kind of scene. He's acting very mysteriously. He clearly has an intention with the Shan-Chan and with Perrin. And so that's what the audience wants to see. We want to see what is his plan with the Shan-Chan and with Perrin from this point going forward. And if that's never answered, we're going to be pretty upset and we're going to feel cheated. Another thing that is set up with this scene is that Perrin now should have more conflict with his wolfy power. Like he should be more resistant to it and have more questions about it. We should see instances where he feels drawn to his wolf brother power or to his, communing with the wolves, but then kind of resisting it because now he's wondering, is the Dark One telling the truth that the more I embrace this power, the more I belong to him? Like that should be very disturbing to him. Also, the fact that the Dark One is still alive. So this is another thing that this scene should be creating in our audience, is an expectation that we're going to see this kind of behavior from Perrin going forward. And if that doesn't happen, we're all going to be going, what was that meeting about? Why did they even have to talk? Like maybe they shouldn't have talked at all. But anyway, Ishamael had just walked out of the carriage. You hear a ruckus going on outside, and suddenly Elias comes in. And Elias is all bloody, and he sets Perrin free, and he's like, come on, let's go. And they get out of the wagon, and you can see that the wolves are attacking the Shan-Chan. Now, I could believe the wolves attacking the White Cloaks and doing decently well. They obviously have some losses, so like, in the book, actually it's the first book, not the second one, the wolves attack the White Cloaks and take some losses, some pretty heavy losses. I don't recall them attacking the Shan-Chan, but I just don't see how a pack of wolves could beat Aes Sedai. And this is coming from somebody who owns a dog that is very likely part wolf. I'm telling you what, you could have a dozen of her and they wouldn't have a chance against one Aes Sedai girl. So I wasn't entirely stoked with this attack working, maybe as a distraction so that Perrin can get away. But then again, why would Ishamael let him leave? We don't know. We hope that that's answered later on down the road. Is it? Is it? I don't know. I feel like I'm going crazy here. But so Elias says, quick, follow that wolf and, run off to safety. And Perrin's like, what about Loyal and Ingtar and the others? And Elias is like, you can't help them if you're in a cage. So Perrin's like, okay. And he goes and he follows the wolf off into the mountains or the forests or whatever. And that's the first instance that we have Perrin not having a resistance to following the wolves or being embracing his wolfiness. Like, he should have been like, I don't know, I'm not going with the wolves. He just had that conversation with Ishamael. Did he forget it? Or is he caught up in the moment? I guess I could believe that he's caught up in the moment of escape, but either way, I would have liked to have seen maybe a moment of hesitation, a little bit more. It's not portrayed as he doesn't want to go with the wolf because it's a wolf. It's more like, what about Ingtar and Loyal and the others? And then he does eventually go off with the wolf. But anyway, that's the end of the Perrin arc for this episode. I was happy that stuff happened to him. I would have liked to have seen more of him being active. Like, I was so much more satisfied with episode 2 and kind of 1, but again, 1, it was like stuff was happening to him. But episode 1, we had a good action, or episode 2, we had a good action scene where the Shan-Chan attack and he's helping to fight. So I just hope we're not getting, more of this, like, just walking and talking all the time, because episode 1 was walking and talking, and now we're at episode 3, and he's talking a lot. Action is happening around him, but he's not taking part in it. But okay, anyway, so he escapes. I'm not entirely sure why Elias didn't think that Perrin could help, but whatever. Okay, we're looking at Egwene now, and Egwene starts out basically right where we left off again. She's got a hangover, she's with Elaine, they're going off to, they have to go somewhere that they're apparently late for. They go to Nynaeve's room, and Egwene knocks on the door. I was told, just ignore this is a stupid comment, but I'm gonna comment on it because this happens so often in movies, and it's just something I hate. She knocks on the door and calls for Nynaeve, no answer. So she goes in, and there's someone in there. It is the Mistress of Novices, and the Mistress of Novices is like, oh, Egwene, like, I didn't, it's almost like she's reacting like, I didn't hear you. You didn't hear her knock and call? Like,
Hey,
Oh my God.
What are you doing? What are you doing?
Wait, you said come in!
No, I didn't. Just,
Oh my God.
please get out.
if anything, she should have knocked, called for Nynaeve, and the Mistress of Novices opens the door, and she's like, oh, why are you in her room? I would have preferred that. But anyway, that's not what happens. She goes in there. Mistress of Novices is going through Nynaeve's stuff for some reason, and essentially she looks at Egwene and says, well, I'm so sorry you have to hear it this way, but Nynaeve was called to go through the arches this morning and she never came out. She's dead. Too bad, so sad, but don't worry, you'll get over it. It's not the nicest thing in the world, but I mean, I could see somebody being a very cold person and, especially in like a school setting like this. So that's what the Mistress of Novices is. She's a cold bitch. So she says, yeah, wallow in your grief on your own if you must, but whatever, it'll go away eventually, and she leaves. Then Elaine tries to comfort Egwene, and Egwene is so upset that she says, get out of here. I don't know you. I don't even want you here. Get out. Which is fine. I'm okay with her having this reaction because the person who she's closest to, who's the only person that she knows in the entire city closely like this, is dead. Someone she grew up with, like a big sister basically, is dead. So this is fine. This next scene, though, has some problems. So we've got Liandrin melting down the accepted ring that would have gone to Nynaeve if she had passed through the arches, all three of them. But Nynaeve didn't pass through the arches, so this was never Nynaeve's ring, ever. So she's melting down a ring that they could give to another Aes Sedai. I guess manufacturing these rings is no big deal. Like, it's an easy thing for them to do. Maybe they have like dozens and dozens and dozens of these laying around, and they're just like, well, let's just say this one was intended for Nynaeve. The only thing I could see this being like, okay, it's appropriate for her to melt this ring for Nynaeve, like, oh, Nynaeve, is that this was a ring that was specially selected for Nynaeve. Like, there's something about it. It was intended for Nynaeve only. They would never give this ring to anybody else. So, there. But Egwene comes in, and Liandrin is like, did you come to pay your respects or whatever? And Egwene goes, you did this. You've been on her ever since we arrived at the towers. You wanted her dead. And Liandrin handles this very maturely, essentially saying, okay, I think you're a little upset. I will leave you to your grief. And as she's walking away, Egwene is like, don't walk away from me. And she channels a wall of fire to appear in the doorway, blocking Liandrin from leaving. And I'm just going, So now you can channel. I mean, okay, I'd be all right with this going like, all right. So she's very upset and that's what happens. Because she's upset, it just naturally came out of her that she was able to channel like this, which is kind of what's hinted at in the show and in the books that, it'll just naturally come out of you. But this level of control, I mean, she made a wall of fire appear on the other side of a person, like the opposite side of where she was standing, and just in the doorway. Also, she didn't use her hands. So I'm going, I thought you couldn't channel without your hands, but again, maybe it's just this instance. I would let this thing be as it is and say, all right, this works. If at some point later on it's addressed that, oh, you were able to channel because you were upset, like that is how we've broken through your little mini block, or this stress that you've put on yourself. Like if it was addressed that this was a special case, like this was a moment, I'd be okay with it. But they don't do this. I think I might have not remembered it, but I don't recall there being a scene where they go, oh, now you can channel. It's sort of like she couldn't channel the last time she tried, but now she can with great precision and ferocity. And nobody says anything about it. But Liandrin neutralizes the fire and then starts on Egwene and goes like, your friend had natural ability and power, and you know what? You were supposed to be the smart one, the good one, the one who knew her place and understood that the one power using it is very dangerous or whatever. And she goes, I didn't send Nynaeve to her death. I sent her through the arches because I believed in her.
Because I'm a pusher. I push people.
But she disappointed me. This is her spiel. I actually really liked this speech from Liandrin. But then she says that it's not always the most powerful who write history. Sometimes it's just those, or not sometimes, but it's those who survive. And if you're careful, maybe, you remember your place, you just might survive. But the thing that I didn't like about this conversation is what happens next. Egwene rounds on Liandrin and says,
you have no idea what I'm capable of.
And I'm going, what are you capable of? Until 1 second ago, you couldn't channel. I doubt that you could channel intentionally going forward, but we'll see that's not the case. So now magically she can channel anytime she wants now. But she goes, you have no idea what I'm capable of.
You have no idea how high I can fly.
She has done nothing impressive up until now. So, with the exception of, oh, she got away from the white cloaks or whatever. But I don't feel like this moment warranted you don't know what I'm capable of when she really struggled to actually intentionally channel. So what is she referring to exactly? And if you're going, oh, well, didn't she, help Perrin escape or whatever? Wasn't that intentional channeling? Yeah, but then what happened after that? So she was able to channel intentionally at one moment and then she couldn't the next. And now she can on accident, like where I'm not seeing she's acquiring the ability to use her own power. I'm seeing like a random, she can use it, she can't use it. She can't use it, she can use it, now she can't. There's no control here, so to me, this is an empty threat. Also, did she not catch that Liandrin basically just complimented her, basically said that like, you're able to figure this out, you're the one who's going to live, your friend was overpowered and dumb. Then Egwene goes off to the gardens to cry alone, and she doesn't realize that Matt comes to comfort her, but then he leaves, so really, unimportant scene. It's just she's off in the garden crying alone. Next, we see that she's in the room with the arches. I don't know how she got in. Like, I kind of was under the impression that this was like a locked room you can't get into, but I can give the show this. Like, she maybe heard about where the arches are and went in there and was doing it. But now she's channeling, trying to activate the arches, and she's using her hands. And I got a lot of flack in the comments from people who were like, well, the reason she wasn't using her hands in episode 1 of season 2 was because of what happened with the white cloaks. She doesn't want the crutch of using her hands. And if she uses her hands once, then it'll be almost impossible for her to channel again without them. So why is she using her hands now? And if she's using her hands now, does that mean it's going to be really hard for her to channel going forward without them? I don't think so. From what I recall, we see her doing this with the arches with her hands, and then the next time we see her channel, she's not using her hands, and it doesn't seem hard at all. So I'm not seeing that rule was followed here. And I totally got the whole thing, like, oh, she's trying to make it harder for herself. Like, I've specifically stated that I don't like that she's not using her hands because we haven't seen her channel before with them, or, we haven't seen her actually use the one power. And if it was a rule that was explained to her, you can't use your hands unless you want to be stuck using your hands forever, somebody should have said that. But since no teacher, no Aes Sedai lady came in and said that, it just looks like she can't channel, and she's making it even harder for herself not to channel, so she's not learning anything. But anyway, we're gonna move on. So, back to this. So she's channeling, trying to activate the arches, and I know that there are some ter'angreal, which was explained at the beginning of the Egwene sequence, that they will activate just from the presence of somebody who can channel. But the arches have to be activated. And is it like a special, specific way that they have to be activated? That's kind of the impression that I'm under. Like there's a certain type of channeling that you have to do to make them come alive and do their thing. And I don't know if she knows how to do that. I mean, you're not just taking the one power and throwing it at something and it does the thing it's supposed to do, unless that is what's going on here, but that's not explained. Like, you can't just go up to somebody who's hurt or sick and just channel the one power into them randomly and they'll suddenly get healed. Like, this is why there's like specific weaves that have to be done in order to, fix the person. So is it the same with the arches or not? Can you just literally channel the one power at them? And in this case, what is just channeling the one power? Are you taking the 5 elements and channeling all of them? Or is there something else that you're channeling at them? It's not clear. And this seems to be a world where the rules for magic use are very strict, and I would like to know what they are. As a fantasy fan, I want to know what these rules are, because if you're not going to give us the rules, essentially anything can happen, which means that nothing that happens will be believable, because we don't know what could or couldn't happen. So Egwene's trying to activate the arch to get Nynaeve back, and she can't, and Elaine comes in, and she's like, help me, or, get out, or, Egwene is. And Elaine is like, no, I'm not gonna leave. Like, you're gonna... She gives the Hermione line, like,
you were going to hurt yourself. You might even die. The best outcome here is one of the sisters will catch you and you will be expelled.
You think I care about that now?
Yes.
I'm going to bed before either of you come up with another clever idea to get us killed. Or worse, expelled.
So I thought that was kind of cute. But she essentially says, look, a lot of people have tried to rescue people in there and they just can't. It takes a lot more than one to open them up. Do you really think that Nynaeve would want you to throw your future away just because she died? Like, no, she came here for you so that you could become an Aes Sedai. So I think that, you're doing the wrong thing by risking your life or risking getting expelled. Essentially, that's the argument that is given. And Egwene finally breaks down, realizing that what she says is true. And she goes, she's the strongest person that I know. And, how could she have failed? And Elaine goes, well, nobody knows what happens in the arches. And I'm like, well, I would have preferred if she had said something a little different. Something like, what happens in the arches is different for each person. So nobody can know what she faced in that final arch. And maybe it offered her a better turning of the wheel, or whatever it was that she says at the end, because she does say the whole maybe what she faced offered her a better turning of the wheel. And then Elaine says, I'll go get some blankets and we'll hang out here, because Elaine doesn't want to leave the last place that Nynaeve was, and which is nice. I like this. This is very nice. And they spend the night in this room. So they fall asleep there, and then when Nynaeve comes out of the arch, Egwene runs over to her, holds her, and says, it's all right, I'm here, everything's gonna be okay, or whatever. And I like that. That was very nice. As far as the stuff with Egwene goes, most of it made sense the way she was acting, with the exception of the Leandrin encounter and her threatening her and being able to channel all of a sudden. But anyway, there it was. Rand. Okay, what do we got for Rand? All right. Rand is bringing porridge to Logain, who says, you can cut your hair or whatever, but I can still see that it's red or whatever. I'd just like to point out that, he's totally right. At the beginning of episode 2, the first person Rand has a conversation with in daylight, because he's kind of talking to Selene in the dark at first, but it's a senile old crazy man, and the first thing this senile old crazy man says is, an Aiel, help, the Aiel have breached the wall. Like, he saw right through his haircut disguise. It's not even a disguise that works. I guess it's just so it's not so obvious that it's red, but whatever. But then we have something that really bugs me. So the show is doing this a lot, where they repeat things. It's almost like they reenact parts of scenes that happened in the previous episode, as if they're trying to like inform the audience this is what the situation is. Like, we wouldn't be watching episode 3 without having watched episode 2. So I don't know who you're doing this for. You don't need to repeat what has already happened. Just move on with the information. Logain goes, so when's the other boy coming back? And Rand goes, I told you there was an accident and I'll be looking after you from now on. This is literally the same thing that they just had this discussion in the end of the previous episode. So they didn't need to say that. What they could have done is just started right with the next line, which is, you know, the other boy used to bring me red wine to cover the taste of the sour oats or whatever. And Rand can go, you know that I'm not supposed to do that because, you know, it's dangerous or you're not allowed or whatever. Like, that's all you needed to say, just that. We get the idea. Then we get into the gist of it, which Logain, thank goodness, doesn't want to waste any time. He goes, why don't you just ask me what it is that you want to ask me? And Rand is playing dumb for some reason. I don't know why. Logain reveals that, like, I know who you are. I remember you from Tarvalon when the Aes Sedai were parading me through there. And we see the flashback of him in his cage being paraded through the streets, looking up and seeing Mat and Rand. And he says, when a man can channel, there's a glow about him. So he can see the glow on Rand. And he says, I couldn't help but laugh. I mean, so this is, I guess, why Logain looked like an absolute lunatic the only other time that Rand has ever seen this man before. And that's important to remember. But he says to Rand, okay, it clearly took you a long time to get here to be able to talk to me. So why don't you just come out with it and ask me what it is you want to ask me? And Rand goes, I want to know how to control it. And I'm just going, control it? What does he mean by that? Does he mean like I have to channel no matter what? I mean, Moiraine already told him that's what's going to happen. She told him that you're going to channel no matter what. You can't not channel. It's just going to happen. And then later, because remember, that was the whole deal with him going down into the, into the eye of the world, was like, you're going to channel whether you want to or not. It's just going to happen like a reflex. You can't stop that from happening. So Moiraine has already told him you can't control it. And if he's referring to the madness, Moiraine answered that question as well. Because after the whole, I blew the Dark One to smithereens, which it wasn't the Dark One, he goes, the madness, I could feel it. Like, is that going to happen to me no matter what? And she essentially goes, yeah. And so she's already informed him that you can't control the urge to channel and you can't control the madness. Like, they're both like, so why is he here talking to Logain? It makes no sense. And it makes double nonsense that the only time he has ever seen Logain ever, he looked like a complete lunatic. So you're going to go ask a crazy person how to have control? But Logain says, go and get me a Galdenen, whatever. Go get me some red wine that's from my country. That's what he says. And then I'll show you how to do it. So Rand is like, where am I going to get that? And anyway, then he leaves. Rand is walking back to the seedy hotel that Selene owns, apparently. And there is a gleeman in the square, and people are standing in line to get branded. And he's like, what the hell's going on? And the gleeman essentially says this, that the hunt for the horn is this glorious hunt. And, we should all go on it. And the gleeman specifically says this. I'm just going to read it. He says, the great hunt for the horn of Valir is called the horn that will summon the heroes of the ages from the grave to battle for the light. He specifically says for the light. And for me, the moment he said that, I went, wait a minute. That's not the rules that are in the book. And now I can be okay with changes being made or whatever, as long as they make sense. But then they counter this later. And it's like nobody knows what the horn does. Oh my gosh, this is so annoying. Rand goes over to Selene and asks what's going on, and she goes, oh, they're calling the hunt for the horn. And she says specifically this. Legend says whoever finds it can summon an army of the dead, which is different from the Heroes of Ages, but she indicates indirectly that it's whoever finds it is the one who can summon them. So like they'll serve that person. Now in the book, it's pretty clear that whoever finds the horn and blows it, the Heroes of Ages will come back from the dead to fight for whoever blows it, which is why it's such a big deal that the horn gets found, because Padden Fane has it, and Lord knows what he's going to do with it. If he blows it, this means the Heroes of Ages will come back and fight for the bad guys.
Are we the baddies?
So that's why it's super urgent for this hunt for the horn to like go and find it. Now, I don't know why they placed this information here. They're placing it here. They're telling us why the horn is important, and they're being very vague about which one it is. And they're doing it after the hunt for the horn is over. And I know you're like, oh no, the hunt for the horn is not over. Yes, it is. Perrin was our POV on the hunt, and he's not hunting for it anymore. It's over. It would have been really nice if we had this information at the beginning of episode 1, so we knew why it was so urgent for them to go and find the horn. But of course, none of the Shinarans were actually rushing to try to find the horn. Like, it didn't seem urgent, so I guess it's all just, we're being consistent there. Anyway, so Rand goes over to the stand where they're selling alcohol, which is apparently Celine's stand. She's selling alcohol to all the people who are going to be going on this hunt. And she goes,
what is it you're looking for?
And he goes,
I'm looking for a specific red wine.
And he tells her what it is. And she goes,
oh, can I know what this is for?
I'm mysterious.
Ooh, I'm turned on.
It's stupid. But anyway, she indicates that she knows how to get her hands on this wine, but you're going to have to come with me and we have to get you a better coat. So the two of them leave to go and get a better coat. The next scene, they are at what appears to be a party for the nobles. And at this point, I was trying to figure out what the situation was here, because I thought that this was like a crappy city, but that's not the situation at all. So I had to pick this up through the dialogue, like deducing what the situation of this city is. But this is a very rich, wealthy city, even though the only bits of it that we have seen up until this point are literally like slums. But it's a rich, wealthy city that has a slum right up in it, basically, the foregate. And now they're in the rich part. And so maybe it's because for the last episode, I was harvesting clips out of Marie Antoinette, the movie with Kirsten Dunst. But when I saw this party, I thought Versailles. But these dresses and everything that they're wearing, I think it's very cool. I would like to see more of this. But it did feel like I suddenly got transported to a different movie. So it was a bit jarring. I wish we had seen more of this before. If it was my movie or my show, I would have said that the fashions that we saw at the White Tower should have resembled this in some way, like the big skirts and the fancy updos or whatever, but we didn't get any of that. How the hell did they sneak into this party? I mean, Celine is posing as, she's, if you didn't know this, she's a big bad guy, but we kind of figured out in the book, but she's posing as the owner of like a crappy inn in the slums. So there's no reason for her to be at a party like this. So she's like, she had to steal clothes that would make it look like she can fit in there. And somehow they got past security to get in there. It would have been nice to at least see how she got in there so that it's believable that she got in there. Instead, they just show up and they're at this party. And Rand is like, they know that we're not supposed to be here. And she's like, I know, isn't it exciting? Essentially, it's so stupid. And like, well, they're excited anyway. They don't know who we are. They think that, you know, maybe we're nobles from far away or something. And I'm just going, I don't believe how you got into this party. There's no security at these noble banquets or whatever. But she pulls out an invitation and says, look, Lady Dulaine, some other lady, gave us this invitation to a dinner party because they don't know, you know, essentially they don't know who you are and they're super curious, and isn't it fun that we get to be involved in these politics? And Rand is like not interested, and he kind of has to remind her that like, I'm here for that wine, and Celine's like, oh, I'll be back then. And she goes off. And as soon as she takes off, this other old lady sidles up to Rand and starts chatting to him. She basically says that invitation from Lady Dulaine or whatever, like, it's gonna have some cost to it, whether you accept it or decline it. And she goes, so what are you gonna do? Are you gonna accept or decline? And Rand just tosses it in the fire, and she goes, oh my gosh, that'll cause a ruckus. Now, it wasn't as obvious in the show. Like, I'm over-dramatizing how these lines were delivered, but it should have been more dramatic, because in the book, the game that is played by all of the nobles is described as being very impactful. Like, whatever you do, it's going to change the game. And there are rules for how people interact with each other and what it means. And when Rand comes into town, he's getting tons of invitations from people, and he's just holding on to them and like not responding because he doesn't know how to respond. And he finds out that not responding is actually going to do, like, it's going to have a butterfly effect from that too. Like, it's going to cause a problem. So you could respond, yes, I'll come, and that's going to do one thing. You can say, I don't want to come, and that's going to have another effect. Or you can just never reply, and that's going to have another effect. So he's trapped, and he has to decide, what is he going to do? And he essentially, actually, he does go to a party, doesn't he? I can't remember. Either way, it's not so important as just understanding that no matter what he does, it's going to cause a problem. And he is aware of this. It becomes something that he's like, no matter what I do, answer yes, answer no, or not answer at all, it's going to be a problem. He feels trapped. And so it's almost like you're being forced to make a decision. So I would have liked to have seen that. Also, remember that the Wheel of Time, this game that the nobles played, was the inspiration, or one of the big inspirations for Game of Thrones. And I would hope that they treat this game with some respect and really emphasize that the rules are quite important and anything that you do is going to have some impact. Because further down the road, I'm sure this is important. And I just don't feel like it was stressed very well in this moment. So Rand is talking to this old lady and learns from her that there is no hunt for the horn. Like she says there may have been a hunt for the horn called, as it is every few hundred years, but there might not be a horn at all. It is essentially a strategy for the queen to clear out the slums. And she explains that the people living in the slums are the refugee farmers that came into town for safety and for provisions and whatever when the Aiel War was going on. But now the Aiel War is over. It has been for, 20 years or whatever. But you've got all these people still living here, and you can't just kick people out. So what they've done is they've called a hunt for the horn. The queen has promised half of her fortune to whoever finds the horn. And all of these poor people are like going, all right, we're going to go. And everyone knows that these poor people are probably going to die, from exposure or starve out in the blight or whatever, but it doesn't matter. And she's essentially saying like, the nobles don't care as long as they save some money because it's one less poor person that they have to feed.
Ignorant peasants.
Rand is disgusted by this, and before he really has an opportunity to respond, that's when Selene shows up. And Selene very rudely goes, "Who are you, lady whatever?" And the lady introduces herself, Lady Alvere or something, I can't remember, it doesn't matter. It'll be more important later. And then the lady goes, "Oh, and I don't believe we've been introduced." And Selene just goes essentially like, "No, we haven't, bye," and takes Rand away. It was so rude. And I'm just going okay, maybe she's trying to play this off as I was just avoiding being asked questions so that way we don't get found out that we're not supposed to be here and someone escorts us away. But I will say this, I'll say the very least, Rand seems to, at the end of this party, have figured out that Selene is not a good guy. So Selene and Rand step aside and she's like, "Look, I got that wine that you wanted." And he's like, "Oh, great." But then he starts telling her what Lady Alvira said, that the hunt for the horn is probably not even real. And Selene laughs, of course it's probably fake or whatever. And she goes, "This is a really political city, and everything that everybody does is a scheme for something, a move for power, or, you don't just do something for somebody for no reason." And Rand is sort of disgusted, you can tell from his body language, by the reaction from Selene, that this is just something that's kind of amusing to her. And he goes, "So what is your reason for helping me?" And she goes, "Don't ask questions you already know the answer to," which I didn't really care for that response, and it doesn't seem like he did either, so good job here. First sign of a good judgment of character. And he goes, "Sorry I even asked for your help. So long now." So he bounces.
"You're a mean person."
Oh, you know what? You go! You get out of here!
And he just leaves her there, and Selene's all upset. "Don't leave me. It's just about to get fun. The fireworks are gonna happen." But she doesn't seem to care that much. Rand brings the wine back to Logain. I don't know how he got into the insane asylum while everybody's it's night. But anyway, so he brings the wine to Logain. Logain is super happy to get it. And this is where Rand basically says, I want to know how to stop the urge to use the one power. And which we've already discussed, because he's already been told you will not be able to stop yourself from doing it. It will just happen. And now Logain repeats that. He repeats what Rand already knew. And he even says that, "You already knew this, though." He goes, "You can't. That's the secret. The answer to the question you already knew. It will eventually spill out of you always." And he demonstrates this by pouring the wine into his cup, and the cup just starts overflowing. He's totally wasting the wine. And then he even throws the bottle in anger. He didn't even want the wine. Rand looks at him and goes,
"You're out of your mind."
Yeah.
"Oh, really? It's just dawning on you now that he's nuts." Have you ever seen him not nuts? And then Logain gets upset and is like, the Aes Sedai made up the madness. It's not real. Like, they did it so that they could suppress men. And then the Aes Sedai know, though, that only the dragon can stop the Dark One. And Rand goes, you're not the dragon. And that's when Logain goes, oh yeah, well, I can hear Lews Therin in my head. You know, I feel his blood coursing through my veins, because I guess he's a descendant of Lews Therin. And that's when Rand goes like, this was a mistake. Yes, it was a mistake, and you should have known. Like, if you were smart, you would have known this, and you would never have even thought to go do this, but he did it. This whole scene, this whole effort to meet Logain was a complete waste. There was literally no reason for him to go do that. I don't know what I thought that he was trying to get from Logain. I was kind of interested, but when I found out it was something that he already learned from Moiraine, I was like, this is stupid, what the hell? Like, he was always insane. So it was just a waste. This was all a waste. You literally did not need episode 2 or 3, which is all we've had of Rand. You didn't need him in this. He's in the same place now that he was before this. He goes,
you can't help me, you're sick.
No shit, Sherlock. And Logain goes,
maybe, but none of us can hide from what we are.
You don't say.
Duh.
I'm so sick of hearing this. It seems like I've heard this said over and over again in this show. Rand comes home to the inn and Selene is there, and now she's throttling him, and she's like, don't you ever leave me at a party like that again. I mean, she wasn't upset at the party, but now I guess she is. And he's really turned on by this, and she wants to bang, he wants to bang. He starts taking his clothes off. I'm like, oh, we're gonna get some nudity in a sex scene, but that doesn't happen. She's like, no, keep it on. Like, that turns her on. Okay. More banging with your clothes on, I guess. She goes, leave it on, my lord. Yes, show me, show me. It's like we're getting some cheap porno dialogue here, and show her what? Show her that you're taking charge? Or show her the one power? Like, anyway, it's stupid. But he's starts doing his thing, and suddenly he starts channeling, and he's like kind of disturbed by it, and she's like, just let go, I'm not afraid. I don't know why she wouldn't be afraid. Even as one of the Forsaken, can the dragon not kill her accidentally? I mean, he destroyed the world, right? Accidentally. But then he wakes up and turns out it was just a dream. And so he sits up and it looks like he's channeling and he can't control it, and suddenly fire leaps out of his hands and it sets the ceiling on fire. He goes, oh no. So none of the whole banging thing was even real. It was just in his dream, which is real, but we'll get to that when we get to that in the next episode or the future episodes, whatever. He runs outside. Selene runs out and she's like, oh no, what's happened? And her inn is burning down. And that's it. Everybody's okay, but the inn is burning down. The end. This all felt pointless. Like, we really didn't need that inn. We didn't need Selene to be in the slums. We didn't need any of this. I just don't understand it. Matt! Okay, what are we doing with Matt? So, he has a similar wake up to Perrin.
I'm sorry I was sleeping.
Because he didn't notice Leandrin unlock his door, open the big creaky door, and then what, she snuck in. Anyway, so he wakes up. He immediately is giving her snark, and she's like not paying any attention to that. She's like, we lost a sister today, a woman of incredible power.
What the hell are you talking about? Who are you talking to?
And she says it was someone that she respected. And I'm going, when did you respect Nynaeve? I mean, I guess maybe she respected the power she had, but she tells Matt, you're free to go, the door's open. And Matt's like, what are you playing at? And Leandrin goes, all you've been saying since I brought you here is that Moiraine left you behind, you never would have abandoned your friends. And they are telling us this instead of showing it. We never once saw an interrogation scene between Leandrin and Matt. She never seemed to be asking him questions, trying to find out what it was that he was doing with Moiraine. Never. Not in the previous episode, not in the episode before that. So you're telling us what happened, even though we never saw it happen. And we're supposed to now feel like, oh yes, it's been so much questioning.
Don't look it up. Just take my words as fact.
Where, yeah, he's been telling her all this time that like, oh, my friends abandoned me. We didn't see it. We don't believe it. You can do this in small doses once in a while, but if you're doing this all the time, it's extremely annoying. I think that the writers do this as a way of not revealing specifics of information, so that way they can do whatever they want, and then it's believable because they never set the rules. They're like, there are no rules, so we can do whatever we want with it. Because I have no idea now if Matt actually believes that his friends left him. Now, if in season 1, we saw him trying to convince his friends not to go with Moraine, which we didn't see, I could maybe believe that when they did go off into the arch or whatever, not the arch, the portal gateway thing at the end of season 1, and he stays behind, I could see him telling himself that they left me. Like, I tried to tell them not to do the thing they're not supposed to do, but they went and did the thing they're not supposed to do. They didn't do the right thing, which would have been stay with me. They left me. I could see him psychologically telling himself that. But since we didn't see any of that happen, I can only conclude that he's lying to her. He's lying to Leandrin now, saying, they left me. But in his head, he knows the truth, which is, I left them. Like, that's what I see, that it's a lie. But the thing is something that happens later on in this conversation with Leandrin indicates that, no, he actually did think that his friends left him. So we'll get to that when we get to that. Leandrin says to him that Egwene is here in the tower and really needs a friend right now, and Matt thinks that it's a trap, and Leandrin's like, stay, leave, I don't care. And Matt gets mad and says, 5 months of questioning and games.
Did I miss something?
When did that happen? We did not see it. And he goes, and what, you're done? That's bollocks. Okay. But Leandrin says that she's mad because she should have been getting her friend ready for this big test or whatever, but instead, for the last 5 months, she's been wasting her time with Matt. And she goes, Moraine may have seen something important in you, but I don't see anything important about you. She goes, you're a coward and you're stupid, a desperate boy wallowing in self-pity, blah, blah, blah. You blame your friends for leaving you, but I know you. You left them and you would do it again. And then she essentially says that, you should go find Nynaeve if she'll have you, or go home, or go starve in the Blight. It doesn't matter because you don't matter. And this makes Matt cry. It was specifically when she said, you left them. He's crying as if this is a revelation to him. So this is the reaction that I'm talking about that makes it seem like he genuinely believed that his friends left him. But I saw nothing to indicate that he could possibly come to this conclusion, unless he's totally delusional. So I don't know what the show is trying to do here. They're not telling us what happened in any of the questioning. They're not revealing how, was he lying? And then this is part of his lie, that he's crying in order to make her think like, oh, you got me, but it's all an act? Or does he genuinely think like, I left them? Because then later in this episode, he sees Egwene and she's crying and he's like gonna go to her, but then he seems ashamed and he doesn't want to go, he can't bring himself to face her because he knows that he left her. And I'm just going, when you don't set rules or expectations for where things are logically leading to, anything could happen, which means nothing is really believable. One of my notes here says, when you aren't clear about a character, who they are, what their motivation is, or what they are doing, you make it possible for anything to happen and you can justify that it works, which basically means you've got no story, you've got no character, it's just bollocks. Anyway, so Leandrin leaves and then Matt leaves and he goes and sees Egwene crying, but he's too ashamed to go and reveal himself that he's here, so he goes back to his cell. He pulls back the chest of drawers that reveals the hole that goes to Min's cell, and the shape of the hole is different for some reason, but whatever. And he's like, hey, Min, get over here. And she's like, she makes a sex joke, but anyway, she comes over and she's like, the door is open. What are you doing? And he's like, I don't know. I don't know where to go. I finally can leave, but I have no idea where to go. And she's like, well, the door's open, so, that's the only thing that should matter. We should just go through it. And so she leaves, and then Matt follows her. Matt goes with her. So I guess the control of the White Tower under the Aes Sedai isn't that strong. In the books, nobody can leave the White Tower without them knowing. As a matter of fact, nobody can leave the entire city without them knowing. But this isn't a difficult thing for them to do. Okay, so the show has changed this. The Aes Sedai don't have as much control over the city as they do in the books. All right. I have no idea what that's going to affect further down the road. Maybe nothing. Anyway, in the next scene, Min is saddling some horses, which she has stolen and admits to stealing, and then Matt comes up and he's got 2 sacks of what appear to be provisions. So he has stolen a bunch of stuff too. And they're like, all right, we're gonna go escape the town together or whatever. And she goes, can you hold the horse for me for a second? I gotta go get one more thing. And I can only imagine what was going through Matt's head when she took off saying, I need one more thing. Like, I'd assume, if I was him, that she's off to go find some women's products, you know, like tampons or something. So he's going to be real confused later on when that's not what she comes back with. So she goes off to some restaurant kitchen, it appears, and Leandrin's waiting for her. And we find out, Min was a plant. So Min was in the cell next to him because Leandrin planted Min in that cell to basically be a mole, to get more information out of Matt. This was all part of the scheme. I don't like Min's line when she says it was mostly even his idea, like indicating the escape. No, it wasn't. It was your idea. Like, you had to convince him to go out the door. So when was it ever? Whatever. It doesn't make any sense. Then Leandrin asks Min, do you know the way? And Min is like, yes, I know the way. So Leandrin, her part of her scheme was to get Matt somewhere specific, to do something specific, I assume. And we expect from this moment that we're going to find out what that plan was.
We all know that will never happen.
Then why are we here?
Now, the next thing that she says is, you need to do this. So Leandrin is kind of threatening Min, saying, you need to do this, because if you do this, then Moraine won't have anything over you or me ever again. And I'm just wondering, what the hell did Moraine have over Min? I just don't understand. I thought that all the Aes Sedai knew that she can, you know, see images of the pattern. That was sort of the thing that was indicated to us. And, you know, you can go like, oh, well, back in episode 1, it was, you know, sort of vague. She said, oh, the Aes Sedai are keeping your secret. You know, can you imagine if everybody knew that you can see the future or whatever, you know, like no one would be leaving you alone ever again. That was one of those keep it so vague that we can do whatever we want coming up and it'll all make sense. The dialogue that was used there indicates that there are more than just Moraine who knows that Min can see the future. I mean, obviously Leandrin knows. Was it Leandrin who saw Min at the bar? I mean, so Leandrin is popping into bars in Tar Valon? Or was it one of Leandrin's minions? So Leandrin's minions pop into bars and noticed that Min was there and knows that Min can see the future. Like, this is... all signs indicate that all the Aes Sedai, or many of them, know what Min can do. So what the hell does Moraine have over Min? Nothing, as far as I can see. What reason does Leandrin have for keeping Min? Like, what is the threat that she has other than I imprisoned this woman against her will? Like, does it make any sense? I just don't know. I honestly don't know how to fix this because this is not what Min is up to in the books at all. And we'll get to that later when it becomes more important. For now, this is all made up. Leandrin is like, you need to take him to this specific place to do this specific thing so Moraine doesn't have anything over us anymore. And that's when Min grabs a round of bread and leaves. So Matt is going to see her come back after she went off to get one more thing that she needs, and it's a round of bread. If he thought that she was going off to get tampons, he's really confused right now.
No other form of feminine protection feels better.
It's the best feeling of all.
But that's it. That's all I've got for this episode. I really don't have much to say about it except that, man, I'm so relieved that Moraine wasn't in it because I don't know if I could handle the kind of anger that usually comes from having to deal with her scenes. Because there was a lot in this that really upset me. And also my trying to get all of my notes out as quickly as possible was like so draining. But that's all I got for now. So if you liked it, I'm so relieved. I mean, this was probably my most rushed episode yet, but please like, subscribe, hit the bell for notifications if you're feeling super, super generous. Check out my Patreon or Ko-fi. I've got links in the description. Or you can click the Money Heart Thanks button down below. You know, leave me a tip or something. And I'll catch you in the next one.